Hi. One of the most important things I've been reiterating here and there in the videos is the idea of creating and working with readable text treatments. And here I'd like to show you a PDF of several different ones, some of which work better than others, and they work in ways that you might not be used to seeing. So we're going to take a look at some of these different approaches here. This PDF uses some clever gibberish text, which is generated from, there are several websites you can go to plug in keywords, and it will randomly generate gibberish sentences, so it's kind of fun to look at. But here it's been used just for the type treatments. The first one is done in an Old English, old style typeface. Now, generally speaking, this is considered somewhat illegible because it's so decorative and it's so heavy and condensed. However, the treatment here is not that bad. You'll notice that it is great contrast, black on white. The line length is a little bit long. I would have made it shorter, but you'll notice that it has some decent leading. So this is actually something that is readable. So if you ever had to use this typeface, knowing that spacing around the letters is of prime importance, as is a short line length and a good contrast. The next couple paragraphs use sans serif and serif respectively for the same treatment, and it looks like they're the same size, and you can see the differences in the two serif and sans serif, and the sans serif one looks a little larger. So I would say for better readability, the type size on this one could go down, but I would keep the same leading. And as with all of these, I think the line lengths are a tad too long, and I would make them shorter just for better readability. But generally speaking, these two are pretty good for readability. The next couple are not. The bold, the all caps, not as easily read. The bold gets dark. It has a dark text color, as we say. It's not bad in some ways because it's upper and lower case. It's got decent leading, but we try to avoid that in body copy. Bold is just too much. All caps, you can hopefully immediately see that this is tough to read. All the letters are the same height. It just makes it tough, and the long line length doesn't add to this. So we do avoid bold and all caps in paragraph text. The next sections are what we call reversed text, any text that is lighter than its background. Now this can be a very effective treatment for headlines, for subheads, for really short passages, but even for something this long, no, it's too much. It makes the eyes tired after a while. And here, in this example, which uses the font Papyrus, you'll notice that the ascenders and descenders are starting to bump into one another, which says that the leading is not deep enough, and this would need to be reset. And some designers feel, by the way, that the font Papyrus is so overused that it's a good one to avoid anyway. This next one is quite good. It's a light green background with black text, and I think generally that is a readable type treatment. Here we have the same green background, but not so readable. The bold here, the thin typeface here, notice that it's set in gray. Very difficult to read, and this one is horrible. Not only is it all caps and bold, it's a condensed typeface that is practically completely illegible. So we want to avoid the decorative fonts treatment on paragraphs. And here's another example. A really cool looking digital font, very modern, but not in this treatment. Really tough to read. Okay. Now here's an interesting example. This is a very small point size, and it's kind of hard to read on the left, but the same size type is a lot easier to read on the right because of the leading. The leading has been probably tripled in depth, and it's really still quite small, but you'd agree, I think, that it would be a lot easier to read this on the right. So if you ever have to use small point size on your text, make the leading as deep as possible for ease of reading. Next we have an example of how text that's overly large is really tough to read, as you can quickly see. It's tiring. Here are some great examples of what not to do. Gray text on a light green background, really tough. And then my personal favorite, the busy background. You can't read that text at all. It is just impossible. Here's one solution, and that is to take the same background and ghost it back. Make it a lot lighter, and then the text is much more contrasty on top of that. Lastly, I went over these in another video, but we'll repeat them here again. This is the same paragraph set in different alignments. This is flush left and this is justified. Each of these two top ones are really quite readable and work quite well in layouts. If you work with the word spacing on the justified so you don't get the holes in the text, you can be quite successful with these two settings. Flush right, which is here, and centered don't work as well for body copy. The rags are just too distracting. So you want to avoid those two settings for long passages. This is something to be aware of if you use text wrap here, where you wrap text around a graphic. You should really use a justified type alignment when you're wrapping text around something, because you'll get a straight line on the edges and you'll get a much cleaner line around your text wrap, around your graphic, if you use justified. This is flush left, rag right, and so you get a super raggedy left side there. Okay. This is a border text treatment. Be careful with how you use these because they can be hard to read, but if you ever do use it, I recommend an all caps version so the letters are all the same size. Makes for a better border. Lastly, we have a nice treatment here, a block of text on its side. This can work really well if you use a justified alignment, get rid of any gaps in the word spacing, and you use good contrast and a nice readable typeface. And then at the end here we have some not so readable because it's gray on green. The black reads a lot better over the green background. I'm going to finish here with a fun example of something that a student sent me a couple years ago. I have never been able to figure out what this says. I think it's probably a logo for a band, a death metal band, and it's a case where the letters have been overly treated and it's just absolutely impossible to read. So do show some restraint when working with logo text and keep these readability tips in mind as you proceed. Thanks.